Welcome back to my channel. James Pringles here with another video. Today we're discussing some ideas of mine for a campaign. So basically I have a document on my computer of just all these ideas that I could possibly do on a campaign. Now the list is getting quite big and I thought I'd go through some of those ideas with you guys today. So if you want to use them, you're welcome to. The only thing I would like is if you were to let me know how it goes basically. These are just some general ideas, so it doesn't even have to be for a campaign. It could be for a book you want to write. You could use this for anything. So any kind of storytelling that you're doing, if you do want to use any of these, like I said, you're welcome to. Just let me know how it goes for you. My first idea is one that I got from one of my players as they started running a superhero campaign for me. Thank you so much for the idea. I know you're watching. So the idea is of a school that has superheroes and supervillains. So when you go, you get sorted into a house, kind of like a sorting hat or something like that, where you'll get either picked as a superhero or a supervillain. So the idea is once you get sorted in your house, you will be paired with one from the other one. So if you're a hero, you get paired with a villain will get paired with a hero, and that's your nemesis. And there are a few classes together where you have to learn how to equip with them, so it's very important to have back and forth when they're fighting against each other out in the real world, so you're getting trained for this. And the idea that this college or this school is set up so that when you're out in the real world there is a balance between villains and chaos and order and heroes. So there's never one too many, and this is a really fun idea, and it seems a little bit crazy and silly, but you can have a lot of fun with it if there is a villain that does come along that doesn't want to play by these rules that have been set since these powers come about. And then does that mean that the heroes and the villains work together to find this other person who just is chaos incarnate? Or do some of the villains side with that villain because they don't want the rules either? And I think that's a really fun way to do it. Or you could write it from a point of view from one of the characters that want to be a hero, or if you're writing a book the main character wants to be a hero, but they get sorted into a villain house. And I think that's really fun, and you can really just expand on that. Another idea I had is one of a high society campaign, or even you could do this as a book as well, where high society are all very, very powerful and wealthy spellcasters. And the idea behind this is it would be very driven by character motivations rather than trying to acquire wealth or material goods or power, because the idea is that you're trying to one up another house maybe, and it'll be all that like bickering, and you'd have new money try and come in and move into the rich district, and you know, the neighborhood would probably throw a big fuss over it. And basically I just thought the idea of being super powerful magic users would be a lot of fun. And if you were to do something like a Pathfinder, a D&D or Cypher campaign with this, I would suggest trying to make the players feel very powerful outside of their own little bubble of high society, because I think it's very important for them to feel wealthy and powerful in that. Another idea I had, which just kind of popped into my head when I was having coffee with my mum the other day, was an after death campaign or story, even where everyone in the party or your main character is dead and they're trying to work out how they can go back to the world of the living or pass over. And the idea of this would be so many different entities, gods, demons, devils, trying to tempt the soul or the dead person to come with them or do a certain task so they can move on. And it would create this fun of like who is trying to cheat me and who is actually trying to help me, and it could be a lot of fun there. Or even your main character or one of your players could be coming from hell and trying to get from hell, now they're in purgatory, now they want to try and get into heaven or back to the world of the living, if there is even a possibility to return to the living after death. And just creates a lot of fun, tension and mystery to unravel, and I think it would be a lot of fun to unravel that mystery of trying to pass over or return to the living. Next idea I had was definitely inspired by the new Mythic Odyssey or Theros book. Is a mythology campaign, so something where we're fighting those classic mythology creatures from Egypt or from Greece. I'm a massive classical enthusiast, so it's going to be Greece for me when I do this one. So the idea would be to put a unique spin on some of the monsters. So obviously the classic Hydra, where you have to cut off its head and seal up the wound with fire, is something that most people know, and if you don't know, well, whoops, sorry, spoilers. But the idea would be to use that similar sort of concept but have a different weakness. And I think this is something that I wish we could see more with D&D, and have that weakness for a monster. So we need to have a certain object that will help destroy the monster, or a certain weakness, kind of like a video game where you got that one weak spot that the big bad boss has at the end of the battle, and you got to hit that for the massive damage. And I think that's a really fun idea, and I think that's something that we could utilize more in our role-playing games. And just on that, is if you are having in a mythology campaign, like especially with Egypt, Greece, or even Mesopotamia, the gods were very present there, and they always kind of interfered with mortal affairs. And I know in D&D, and I assume Pathfinder's much the same. I don't know, I haven't had a lot of look into Pathfinder yet, but they don't really. They just kind of maybe give one of their clerics some powers. But I really love the idea of, someone like this king of gods coming down and being like, you upset me, so I'm going to spite your family now. And I just think that's a lot of fun to have, like, petty gods do those little slides to each other, or, they have their champions. Like, alright, you are a champion of Zeus, and Zeus is really upset that somebody has not done this sacrifice, so we need to go down and punish them, or something like that. And that could be a lot of fun to have, obeying the whims of the gods. If you really wanted to go an extra mile with this one, if you did have a rival god that the players had to defeat, you have this great opportunity where you could do some epic level D&D where the players become a god. So they could like take down a god, and obviously that would upset the balance maybe, and then they become a god and have to deal with god affairs, and maybe there's a battle they have to do as a god, or maybe that's just how the campaign ends, as they ascend to godhood and that's it. And I think that's a lot of fun there to have there as well. Also, another thing is if we do a campaign set in some basis of history, like for example, D&D seems to have that medieval feel with magic, I think it'd be a great idea to kind of expand from that and do a little bit different. I'm really excited to do this with my up-and-coming campaign I'm going to do next. So I'm actually going to set it in the classic antiquity, so just after the Bronze Age collapse. So we're going to have a lot of bronze armor and bronze breastplates. Going to be kind of your best kind of armor you can find, and then or maybe a bit of iron's going to start coming in as well, but still isn't really there yet, and it's not really able to be used. And I think that's a really interesting and new take on that, because we always see the classic full plate armor, and I think it would just be fun to mix it up. Yes, and then we can put things like linothorax as well, because fabric armor is really cool and probably more prevalent than leather, but I'm not getting into that debate. In a lot of story with might, magic, sorcery, and the classic good prevails over evil, we do see humans, or the main characters, elves, whatever creatures you may have, seem to really go up and beyond and really take on some beings that are greater than normal mortals, and that is beautiful to have the hero obviously overcome that. But at the same time, I do think there is another avenue where we could explore. That's where this next idea is just having some kind of being that's just beyond humanity that we can't really see and understand properly. And what I mean by that is if we had a campaign or a story or some kind of media, whether it's even a comic, if you wanted to turn this into a comic, go ahead, where you've got a god or a divine being or some otherworldly creature, even if it's a dragon that just seems to be ruling a kingdom, and is using the populace as just pawns in a battle against another. Maybe it's just a family feud and these two beings are fighting over who is going to get this piece of land, and us mortals are the ones paying the price. And this may be something that comes out at the end of the campaign, and it's just really interesting to make the players feel so small. And this is not going to work with everyone. Someone's not going to necessarily like that dark and that kind of feel small, but I think there's a lot of potential there, because I feel like a big, powerful, otherworldly being, whether it's a Cthulhu-esque thing or a dragon or some kind of demigod, I think it wouldn't necessarily think as mortals as much more than ants to be stepped on, and maybe not, maybe it might be more benevolent? I don't know about you, but I just, in the wild, if you're walking around, how many people worry about stepping on ants? Personally, if I step on an ant, it's not going to really upset me too much, which may sound horrible, but it's just, we're on a different level, different scale of the food chain than them, and I think maybe a creature like a demigod or a dragon or some otherworldly being, or even like a big, scary Cthulhu-esque monster, it's just not going to really care, and it's just going to use us as a way to help. Just like we've used other animals to help us get through tasks such as using horses to pull carriages and stuff like that. And I think that's really interesting to have that. And if it does come down to someone really tyrannical and it does get out, that does open up a whole nother story where it's about breaking free of this demigod, or other worldly being. And I think that's a lot of fun as well. Now, I have mentioned in my previous videos that I do love a good story when it comes to D&D or any other role-playing game. So it's always the story for me and the character development rather than the rolling the dice and the combat. And this next idea is expanding on that. So I would love to have a campaign, especially play in or even run in, and I'm getting a little bit of this when my player's running that superhero campaign for us at the moment, is a school, or like whether it's an adventuring school or whether it's like a mage school, like kind of like Harry Potter or something. I think there's a lot of potential there if it is like a school and you just have to focus on those school relationships or doing your homework or getting this assignment done. And if it's like a mystical world with magic or like monsters, then, you know, you've got that whole Harry Potter feel where you can go and explore like other monsters and learn how to tame them. And then you got to go home on time to get your homework done. And it could really be interesting to have a player's, if it's D&D, have their proficiencies or skills if it's another system, depending on what they're studying. So if it's about studying monsters and controlling them, then maybe they'll have some more like animal handling sort of skills and they need to apply that to their homework. Or maybe they're just doing history of magic and, you know, your classic history or your knowledge roles are really going to be helpful to do your homework. And I think there's a lot of fun to do that. And then you can get up to shenanigans when you got your time off. And I think it's just a lot of fun and mayhem to be had. Alright, this next idea is about dinosaurs. So, who doesn't love dinosaurs? If you don't love dinosaurs, put it in the comments, because I'd really like to know why, because I think they're really cool, and I don't understand people who don't, so I would love to have that conversation. But yeah, dinosaurs. I like the idea of having a campaign where humanity, or whatever race it is, or maybe it's a mixed tribe, we're just coming out of that cradle of life sort of stage, and we're just sort of developing a tribe. And I think this is a great idea, and even if we do some bit of bendy wendy timey wimey fantasy world and add some like dinosaurs and monsters, there could be a lot of fun here. So, you know, the party will start all in the village together, I would say, or even the main characters, if you want to turn this into a novel, is that they'll start in a village and they've got to deal with all the tribal politics. So maybe the case of they're all sent out to go hunting. You know, hunting, we've got to do that, you've got to chase some deers down, there's a bit of survival skills there. But then, all of a sudden, some raptors come. What does the party do? Do we take them, or do we just get as much food as we can to bring back to the tribe and run? Or do we leave the deer behind and we don't bring any food back? And if they didn't bring any food back, what kind of consequence does that have with the chief? And I think there's a lot of fun there as well. And even we can even step that up and have it, what if one of the players or the main character wants to be chief, and what's the steps to do that? And there's a lot of this survival, and there's a lot of, so it's not necessarily like good or evil that I know a lot of D&D sort of does, but personally, I don't really like good and evil. I don't think the world is black and white like that, and that's why I don't run my campaigns necessarily with good and evil. But I think there's a lot of fun to be had with a world with dinosaurs and trying to survive in that world with these giant predators, and we're just kind of philandering around big squishy humans or elves or whatever you want to be. Alright, so we're on my last two ideas here now. The next one is going to be a Pathfinder one, and when I say Pathfinder I don't mean the game, but more exploring and finding new worlds. So the idea I had here, this could be a planet, this could be checking a far off world, or it could be just going over the sea to a far off new land and trying to colonize it. So if you want to do it history wise, we could do the whole England thing, but I think that's messy and I would not recommend that. But if we're doing a fantasy setting, it could be this land across the sea that nobody's ever explored or nobody's ever gone and come back, and then we need to set up a colony over there. So the really fun idea of that is that time at sea where you go to get there, or if it's space and you've got the spaceship over there, you've got that downtime to talk to this crew of people who are all on this expedition to set up this colony. And then when you get there, is this the first colony, or was there a previous attempt, and what went wrong with that first attempt? And is that something that they have to investigate, or is it just about setting up a colony and surviving? And then if it is just about the survival part, that's really fun as well, because what's there? Is it a world full of like chaotic monsters that nobody's ever heard of? Is it wild magic that just roams through the world and lightning bolts just come flying out of stone and things? Or is it a weird group of natives there who this is their land and you know, your people are invading it? Or is it something that they're also trying to colonize? It's a race to who can colonize the most resources. So it's a lot of fun there, and you have that other people that are going to be there, friend or foe. Or it's the other colony, someone else may be trying to colonize. A classic example looking at history, the whole colonization, French versus England. Not wanting to go into the messy part of that part of history, but I think that's really fun too. So it could be two fantasy kingdoms trying to spread their influence and trying to out-compete each other. And it may be the case where they're not friends, but they're not enemies either. And they're not really willing to go out in war, but they're willing to backstab and undercut each other. And that could be a lot of fun as well. Alright, the last idea I have is a post-apocalyptic campaign. This idea came from me reading one of the newest Numenera books. And then not long after that, I decided to watch Mortal Engines. So if you've seen that movie, really cool movie, some beautiful effects there. I didn't think the story was very strong, but I like the premise. But a perfect example of that is they're always in that movie, they're using tech that they don't understand that's left over from our civilization. And Numenera as well, I'm not sure if anyone knows about it, it's really good. It's like the big flagship thing for Monte Cook Games. It's their major cipher system setting. And basically in that, there's old tech left behind from the previous world, and they don't understand it, and people are trying to use it. And there's a lot of intrigue there. If you find this thing, what does it do? Maybe we're not meant to use it this way, but when you do use it, it does this effect. There's a lot of fun there as well. But in the Mortal Engines, settlements are mobile, and I really like this idea. And it may be that same thing in this setting is maybe the settlements are on wheels and they drive around and try and get the depleting resources that is left in this wasteland of whatever's happened in the past. Or maybe it's that they're on legs, or maybe it's biomechanical, it's a mix of this, so the city is actually alive in a way, and it's living and breathing. Or if it is living and breathing, maybe it's a case of a giant tortoise or a giant beetle, and the city rests on its back. And then that also opens up a whole other avenue of exploration, is what about these beasts that we are on their back? Do they like it? Do they even care? Or is it the case that we are chaining them up and subduing them? And that's a whole nother thing, is maybe we are subduing these creatures and they're being tormented and we need to help free them. And that's a whole nother avenue you could explore with this idea. Especially if they are an intelligent creature and we are just riding on their back and making them do what we want to do. You know, it could be really a thing of morality for the party, whether they're like, well, we've been doing this and we need to do this to survive, but is it fair to do it to these creatures? And it's weighing up survival of the race or survival or ethics. And I think that's a really can be a tough decision to make. I know some people are probably going to lean one way or the other, but I think that's a lot of fun to add that. These are just some of my ideas that I've got written down on my list. I have many more. If you did like this video and you want me to do something again like this, or maybe go through some ideas for characters, what you like, I can definitely do that in the future. Put in the comments below, let me know. Like I said, if you did want to use any of these ideas, go ahead, do so. I would love to hear the result of that if I can. Like, let me know in the comments if you're going to use one, or if you think you could tweak one, make it your own. Let me know as well. I'd love to hear that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you did like this video. It was a little bit different, of course. If you did like it though, please like, subscribe, share to your friends. If you don't have any friends, just yell it out to the street. Yell it to everyone. If you want to follow me elsewhere, I have a Twitter, very active on Twitter, @SprinksDM. I have an Instagram, I post little snippets at GMSprinkles. And I also have a Facebook page, but I will put all these in the link below. Have a lovely day, keep rolling those dice, but don't let them define you.